The life cycle of many infectious diseases and/or agents is linked to the climate. Climate warming has caused intense changes in prevalence and/or severity in infectious diseases. Wildlife and plant diseases, for example, are generally less influenced by these control measures, which makes the climate signals more detectable when trying to test. While predicting the consequences can be tricky, there is some research that supports the theory that the life cycle of infectious diseases is linked to climate change. Pathogens are often interacting with each other and have a nonlinear relationship that comes with nonlinear responses to certain stimuli, like climate change. This can come from a variation in the climate response stemming from different life histories and certain pathogen or hosts. There are some consequences of climate change on the severity of an infectious disease. However, predicting them can be a bit tricky. Mean temperature changes as well as climate variability can alter the risk of a disease itself. The rate of replication, the rate of development, and the rate of transmission of some pathogens should be more strongly dependent on temperature. Looking at the graph, the pathogens had 2 peaks in their transmission cycle instead of just 1 when climate warming had occurred. This could mean that there would be more sporadic emergence of a specific disease in a new population because the extreme temperature changes only allowed the pathogen to spread at certain times.
The host-pathogen relationship refers to the interactions between a host organism and a pathogen, such as bacteria, viruses, or parasites, that can cause disease. The host attempts to defend itself while the pathogen attempts to break down the defenses. Successful pathogens will break through the host's defenses and establish infection, reproduce, and spread. This often leads to disease. The effects of temperature increase are: higher temperatures can increase the metabolic rate of pathogens, which could lead to damage of the host and increased replication rates, which can result in more severe infections and higher disease transmission rates. Elevated temperatures can lower the host's immune response, which can hinder their ability to fight off infections. The metabolic theory of ecology, MTE, is a theory that proposes that the metabolic rates of organisms are fundamentally linked to ecological processes. The main idea of the theory is that the metabolic rates, which increase with temperature, scale predictively with body size and have profound implications with growth, reproduction, and interactions among species. Species interaction can predict shifts in interactions between hosts and pathogens due to climate warming. For example, changes in metabolic rates could alter the dynamics of predator-prey relationships, competition, and disease spread.
The way that infectious disease affect community ecology, biodiversity, and climate change are: climate change has a direct impact on infectious disease in a community. It brings in new diseases and can alter the diseases already present inside of that community. It does this through temperature changes and altering to climate. Infectious disease can also alter interactions between species within communities. It brings them closer to extinction, which is just them getting closer to being wiped out. And it also alters the food chain. This can change the predator and prey relationships, as one may say it's the prey, they could be closer to extinction, so then the predators do not have as much. And then some examples of infectious disease that have altered community ecology are white nose syndrome in bats. It's a fungal disease which grows on the bat skin and brings along dehydration and starvation with many other sicknesses.
Commensal microbes live with or on the host without causing harm or benefit, whereas mutualistic microbes only have a relationship with the host that can cause harm or benefits on both parties. Raising temperatures affects these microbes in many ways. For example, warm seawater and coral reefs can inhibit bacteria growth, causing the reef to turn pathogenic, which is disease-causing. Effects of warmer temperatures on microbes can promote pathogens and increase risk of respiratory disease. Effects of biodiversity loss is big as well. As microbial diversity decreases, there is usually an increase in the abundance of pathogens. Any small change in biodiversity can lead to the important shifts in microbial functions and ecosystem stability. Phenology is the study of specific timing of natural events in the life cycles of plants and animals. Migratory species are more sensitive to climate change. Long-distance migrations can lower parasite transmission by letting hosts escape the pathogens that become accumulated in the environment. Phenological changes in life cycles include altering timelines of their development, reproduction, and transmission patterns. These shifts increase the likelihood of disease spread. Climate change effects on developmental stages are important as they have a widespread ecological consequence. Rising temperatures can cause faster development in multiple species or plants to produce leaves earlier than usual. It also disrupts the synchrony of life cycles. Species rely on environment when it comes to things like hibernation or migration.
According to the data of all three graphs, studies suggest the response of a pathogen depends on the thermal tolerance in correspondence with environmental conditions across a 12-month period, in which graph A demonstrates a greater potential for pathogen transmission to increase as global warming increases. Ultimately, change in disease will heavily rely on the starting temperature relative to optimal temperature value, the magnitude of global warming, adaptations, and finally, measurement errors. A relatively recent study from 2012 focuses specifically about the extreme reduction of sea ice, which is arguably seen as one of the most important ecosystems, home to many microorganisms. According to the article, sea ice provides marine and terrestrial ecological dynamics, influences productivity, species interactions, population mixing, gene flow, and pathogen transmission. However, over the last few decades, sea ice has warmed up twice as fast, putting both marine and terrestrial systems at risk.
Climate change is contributing to species extinctions through its effects on infectious disease, directly impacting humans. This is easily observed in the Arctic region, an ecological system where numerous species populations are declining due to changes in infectious diseases. The overall wildlife health significantly impacts the indigenous people in the Arctic, who rely on the animals for food and cultural practices. Forecasting and modeling may be used to alleviate the shifts climate change has made in infectious diseases, serving as warning and predictive systems. The article mentions a forecasting system that linked ocean atmosphere data to a high risk of a malaria outbreak in Botswana. This allowed for the government to address the outbreak before it even began. Ultimately, these forecasting and modeling systems have the potential to improve the health of humanity and wildlife. Looking forward, the article identifies some key challenges. To improve our forecasting models, we must better understand climate factors such as temperature and humidity, and combine this with our understanding of the metabolic theory of ecology to improve our predictive models. Another challenge is comparing the impacts of infectious disease changes to other consequences of climate change, such as the loss of arable land, rising sea levels, and water scarcity. Ultimately, with a commitment to long-term ecological studies and research, we will be able to better understand climate change and its impacts on infectious diseases, improving the health of humanity and